Streaming live. So, good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Folkestone and Hythe District Parish Council's Joint Committee. Please note this meeting is being streamed live to the internet. Please could all members ensure that their microphone is set to mute unless they are speaking to reduce any background noise. Also ensure any devices nearby are switched to silent. Members should use the raise hand button when they wish to speak. First item on the agenda is appointment of chairman. Could I have your nominations, please, for a district councillor? I think we only have one.
Jenny Hollinsby.
Thank you. Is everybody in agreement with that for the meeting?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I apologise, I'm the only one here, so there you go. You're stuck with me. Second item on is, are there any apologies for absence?
Yes, we have one apology this evening from Councillor Dudas.
Thank you very much. Item 3, are there any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Item 4 is the minutes from the previous meeting. Is it your wish that I sign those as a correct record of that meeting?
I propose them as true and accurate record.
Thank you, Paul. Everybody in agreement?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. So item 5 is a High Street Fund, a presentation covering the Council's High Street Fund and plans to support reopening of high streets across the district. And I think you just said that Lorraine is going to give us a presentation. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Hollinsby. I think the original issue raised by members of the meeting was around empty units in high streets. And I thought what we could do is do a presentation which covered the High Street Fund itself, give some background to that, talk about the place plan also for Folkestone and what we're doing around reopening high streets. And as Lorraine is leading on that work for us, I thought it'd be appropriate for her to come and give a presentation to start with.
Thank you very much. So, Lorraine, are you able to give your presentation, please?
I am. Thank you, Councillor Hollinsby. I'll just share my screen. Okay, can I just double check that everybody can see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some information this evening. As mentioned by you, and I'm going to give a brief update on the Folkestone and Hythe High Street Fund that we've had in place since October 2019. I've then taken the opportunity just to add a couple of slides specific to the place plan programme that's currently in place as well, and then an update on the planning that is currently underway for the easing of lockdown in the future weeks. So first and foremost, the Folkestone and Hythe High Street Fund, just as I say, wanted to give an update to say it's still running. The objective of the High Street Fund was initially to bring empty high street units back into commercial use. We also saw the fund to help animate the high street and improve the townscape and the street scene, and also to look at the introduction of innovative products and support some commercial operations. I'd like to take the opportunity just to remind that there's actually 11 high streets that are eligible to apply for the fund and to get a grant award. The grants themselves are between £5,000 and £50,000. Typically, projects are match funded, and the projects themselves are for capital expenditure. However, we have had some instances where the project has been funded for greater than 50%, and we've had a very small number that have actually received full funding for special cases. I've got a slide, and I apologise if it seems quite busy. There's a lot of information for me to share with you since the launch of the fund back in October 2019. So the top left of the quad that you can see here is a summary of all of the high street applications that have been received since its launch. So we've split those down by the respective high street areas, and you can see the relative numbers there. We have awarded just under £500,000 in grant awards. They've not all yet been paid out. They're all in slightly different methods of delivery. Of those, you can see that the total project costs, so the schemes that have actually come forward, are in excess of £1 million. And then towards the right-hand side, it just demonstrates some of those that have either were rejected, unfortunately, because the high street funding stream wasn't seen as the most appropriate funding stream for the application that was received. But what we've tried to do on the sector spread is give an indication as to the type of activity and the type of schemes that have actually been awarded grant money. Again, not all of these have been delivered. Some of these are still work in progress, but some of them I'll come on to, some of the detail of those that have been successfully delivered. So we can see that the majority of the applications, so of 33 that have been received, some 14 of them have come from Folkestone. I'm pleased to say there's a good mix of sectors that have actually been represented in those applications, from a high number of food and beverage. There's 5 food and beverage ones, but we can see some retail in there. There's also been some public realm improvements, that's predominantly in, and we've had some leisure. So for example, there's an escape room that's currently being developed in Folkestone at the moment for delivery. What we do have, I mentioned there's 11 high streets that are actually eligible for the fund. However, we've only had a small number that's actually been represented and approved grants. So it's an opportunity for me to advertise that the fund is still very much available for all. The previous slide did give the 11 high streets that are eligible, and it's the whole scheme is detailed on our business website, folkestone.works, and there's a dedicated page specific to the High Street Fund. So very high level numbers. We've had 33 projects that have been awarded a grant. 11 have actually been successfully delivered, which, bearing in mind the majority of the grants were approved literally before the pandemic, actually I still think that's quite a good conversion rate for delivery of completion of projects. So we've had a third that have actually been delivered throughout the various lockdowns and during the pandemic. The scheme has actually just been subject to a leader's decision, and it's been extended for a further year. So when it was originally launched, it was due to finish in March 21, but it's been extended to March 22. And because the economic development team have been heavily involved in the administration of the COVID business grants, we actually had a delay in the administration of new applications for the High Street Fund since October. So we currently have in our pipeline 17 new applications which are currently in process. So they're ones that have been received, that people are looking to bring forward, great schemes throughout the district. The opportunity just to share a couple of highlights of those projects that have been successfully delivered. I won't read out every single line, but just to pull out a few of them. We've seen some extension of CCTV programs in Cheriton, Folkestone and Sandgate High Street. There's been a number of premises enhancements to enable disabled access to what were previously challenging sites. I've already mentioned the escape room. That's actually also supporting a local heritage asset in Folkestone as well. So the applicant is the Lees Lift CIC for that particular one. So they took on a vacant unit in Sandgate Road and are bringing forward an escape room, and it's going to be a not-for-profit business where the profits effectively go back to the Lees Lift CIC. There's one at the bottom as well, so supporting the Martello 24 refurbishment programme for additional educational panels and that kind of thing. So the reason why that was seen as important is just the additional footfall that a good visitor experience will provide for Dymchurch in that particular area. So they're the two slides that I wanted to share with you with regards to the High Street Fund. I'd now like to take the opportunity to move on to a programme that I'm actually working with Llewellyn. Llewellyn's the lead in it. I'm the kind of the project manager, if you like, doing the day-to-day activity. And that's a place plan for Folkestone Town Centre. So the reason we wanted to share this with you tonight is Folkestone Town Centre services the entire district. So we felt it was important that everybody has the opportunity to understand the brief behind the work that we're doing. So we have commissioned some urban designers and architects, and it's been led by a company called We Made That, and a number of other businesses who are going to help deliver this brief. Again, I won't go through every single line, but we can see here the purpose of the place plan activity is to get a collective vision for everybody. So that's the council, partners, stakeholders, and also members of the community, the business personnel and everything else. There are some key themes that we expect the place plan to cover. So identification of development opportunities, so setting the ambition effectively. So this is thinking about what does Folkestone need to look like in years to come. So not just the here and now, but in the future. And one of the key parts of this place plan is the identification of the current challenges and understanding of the issues. But as I say, also not just the solutions to the today, but also the opportunities for tomorrow. What's absolutely critical as well is that as part of that work, it has to identify the funding opportunities to bring these schemes forward. So ultimately, we will have an action plan for Folkestone Town Centre that everybody will effectively be behind and be part of. The little logo that you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, you may not be able to see all of the content, but it effectively says we're doing an urban appraisal to get to understand the place. There is a series of events that is developing the ideas for the ultimate place plan. There will be business, stakeholder and community engagement. And then there's another series of engagement where the output and the suggested interventions and those ideas will then be tested with business personnel, stakeholders, residents associations, community groups, and all of the above. What we'd like to, we cannot get enough coverage of this, basically. So we have a dedicated webpage that's currently in development. We're looking for a further update to be available early next week. This is available on our corporate website. There's the address and the link there. We also have a generic place plan email where people can contact us on all things to do with the place plan. And that's placeplan@folkestone-hythe.gov.uk. That is also detailed on the website. I'd mentioned about an urban appraisal. That's effectively a collation of a lot of data and data analysis that is already available. And there's part of the project team is a group called PRD who do socio-economic analysis, and they have reviewed all of that data analysis and presented some thoughts and potential opportunities that need to be reviewed and addressed as part of the place plan. The thing that I was really keen to share this evening is that we're looking to have a virtual public engagement on the evening of the 19th of April. That's from 6 p.m. And we are looking at how we can maximise getting the message out to people to say this event is happening. It should be seen as everybody's event and everybody's opportunity to feed into this process. Again, there's more detail, there will be more detail on the website with regards to the public event. And if there is an opportunity to use some notice boards that you may be responsible for, so we can also get to the people that don't have digital capacity and capability, that's as important to us as it is. We know that a lot of people have been, having to use Zoom and everything during the pandemic, but we feel it's really important that we are able to offer the ability for people to get involved that don't have access to the internet. So if there is an opportunity, as I say, to use any of your notice boards, I would very welcome the opportunity to pop a poster up, if I may. I'm just going to run through my last bit. So I've got some visuals on here. So this is more about the Reopening High Street Safely campaign. So we had a project team that was put together last year for when we were coming out of the first lockdown in June. That was a multi-service area project team. And that included myself in economic development, representation from communications, grounds maintenance, enforcement and licensing, and a whole raft of other groups were involved. We've re-energized that group and we're looking to see what it is we need to do for the easing of the lockdown this year. And that includes, taking stock of what happened last year, what worked well, what, having had the experience of 2020, to help us prioritise some of the interventions that we need to put into place to ensure our district is welcoming, but our district is also safe. That's the main thing, that we remain a safe environment to be in. So there's just some examples of what we're looking at. So signage, beach and traffic management, high street business support, and also the enforcement needs that for sure would need to be there as well. And some of the graphics you can see there are just representation of the risk assessment that we did for each of the 11 high streets and surrounding areas, and just some of the signage and business support information that was made available for last year, which again we'll be looking at to see what we need to do this year, and we will update and get it out there if necessary. And lastly, and as important, is the need to monitor on an ongoing basis to ensure that the interventions that we're putting in place are the right interventions for the different areas that we have in our district, because it's not a one size fits all. And I think we recognise it's not a one size fits all. So thank you, Councillor Hollingsby. That's it. They are the slides that I was going to share with everyone this evening.
Thank you, Lorraine, and very, very interesting and good presentation. So thank you very much. I'm assuming that we can go to questions now, and you'll be willing to answer questions.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you.
Is anybody monitoring the hands for me, please? No answer.
Sorry, Councillor Hollingsby, if I make you co-host, and then you'll be able to see them.
Oh, will I? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Paul Thomas has his hand up at the moment.
Right. Where will I see those?
Try that again.
I'm happy to do it for you, Councillor Hollingsby, if that would help.
Sorry?
I'm happy to do it for you if you want.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful, Llewellyn. That'd be great.
We've got Councillor Thomas first.
Right. I can see it now. Right, Paul, you'd like to ask some questions?
Yeah, thank you. So I think, first of all, I thought it was a really good presentation, Lorraine. Thank you very much for that. And just what was needed. And I think, from what was done last time, I think, taking the learning from that and then building on that is really great. I'll put in a bid for 6 posters for our notice boards for New Romney, so you can send those down to the town clerk at your convenience. I think it's a great plan in terms of the Centre for Folkestone as well. And the only thing I was going to ask really is just in terms of engagement with businesses. And I know it's something that we've had particular difficulty with, because Councillor Wimble and I actually went round to every single business in the high street in New Romney and gave them out a form, and then really tried to promote it. But we found that some businesses, particularly where there was difficulties between the business and the landlord, weren't actually able to get anything put forward. Is there anything we're doing this time that can help to oil the wheels of that a little bit more?
Lorraine, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsby. So we do recognise that sometimes there is a challenge, and I'm glad to say that there was one applicant specifically that was from New Romney, where we have been able to help them, and it was for some works that were requested via the landlord. And thankfully we were actually able to help that particular applicant, and if my memory serves me right, I believe we did fund greater than the 50% for that particular business. So I think where we're able to, Councillor Thomas, we of course will look at every application on a case-by-case basis. There's kind of again, it's another one where there's not one size that fits all. So myself and the High Street Projects Officer that works with me, please do give them my contact number, and I'll more than happily have a conversation where we can make something work within the defines of the fund. We will do so.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much indeed. Because again, the situation we're going to find ourselves is, I think at the moment we only have 2 shops that are currently unoccupied, and one of those has been recently unoccupied, and of course trying to find tenants for that is going to be increasingly difficult. So again, anything we can do to keep the existing businesses running will be great. But thank you very much for your help, and thank you again for the presentations, Lorraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And I think Frank's got his hand up, if I can see. Frank, you're on mute.
That's all right. I was looking for the button. Thank you, Jenny. You said that there were only 7 of the high streets have actually applied or had applied in the first tranche that you did. Have any of the 4 that didn't apply in the first time come forward in the new applications? They're in progress, or are they still from the original 7?
Sorry, Councillor Hobbs, apologies, I didn't quite catch that. You were really quiet. Could I ask you to repeat the question again?
I think if I can say, I think what Frank was asking was that if they were turned down, if any high streets were turned down in the first tranche, have they come forward for the ones that you're looking at the moment? So in other words, have they reapplied?
What I was meaning, Jenny, was that only 4 of the high streets didn't have an application in the first go. Have they come forward on the second go?
So of the 17 that we've got in the pipeline, those 17 are still only from the high street areas that have already applied. So we haven't had any from Lydd, Hawkinge, Elam. So we haven't had any applications at all since the scheme started.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. Sorry, Councillor Martin. Sorry, you're on mute. You're on mute, Martin.
Thank you, Lorraine, for the presentation. I was quite concerned. I'm Lead Town Council Deputy Mayor. I was concerned with the slides with no applications from Lead. I know we haven't got a huge high street, but I would like some posters, as Paul said, for our notice board. So if you send 6 down to us, I will personally put them in the notice boards and try and beat the drum down at Lead, because it's important that if people are not getting the right information, that us councillors should try and help as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you,
very
Councillor
much.
Sweeney. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask a question? Because obviously, I mean, I'm the district councillor for Lyminge and for Postlin and a number of other small villages that are not actually on that list. Lyminge, we did do a bit of publicity early on, but I think because of the pandemic, nothing else has sort of materialised. But I think that there could be some businesses in the high street in Lyminge that could well benefit. So I think it's something that we need to do, and maybe Roger might be able to take that on board as well with the parish council. And then the other thing is, I mean, we haven't got much in Sellinge, but a thought has just occurred to me that the church, the Sellinge church, is desperate to provide disabled access, because they've made it into a community church. And is that something that could be considered at all? It actually fronts the A20.
I would certainly welcome the opportunity to speak to somebody about it and see if it is eligible or not, Councillor Hollingsby. So if you wanted to put me in contact with someone, then I can certainly have the conversation.
Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? No?
Just
Oh, go on, Terry.
quick one, Madam Chairman. Firstly, I apologise for being, I think it was 8 minutes late, by which time you've done all the earlier bits on the agenda. So I came into the presentation. I think I just missed about a squidging of it, perhaps 10 seconds. Having said that, the presentation was good, and it's nice to see that all of these projects going ahead. But the reason, if I can, the reason I was late here was I've just spent 45 minutes trying to get into another Zoom meeting with 3 different devices, and everyone kicked out the ID and the passcode. I don't know why that was so, and Jenny will probably know this, that I was missing in action or something. But
it's nice to see you now, Terry. It's nice to see you now.
I found my way into this one. So it wasn't a Zoom problem, it's the ID and the other bits and bobs. But anyway, presentation very good, and you know, naturally as a Marsh councillor and living in Dymchurch, I was pleased to see the Dymchurch ones there and others. That's all, Chairman.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Terry.
Roger had his hand up at one stage.
Sorry, who did?
Roger.
Oh, Roger. Did you? Roger, you wanted to speak?
Did I put my hand up? No, I just unmuted to agree with you, Jenny, being a relatively newbie. I wasn't involved in the canvassing of the businesses in Lyminge, but I have made a note to do that. We've got a meeting coming up, so we'll certainly talk to our businesses. And yes, please, some posters. I'll check with Cherry how many boards we've got.
Thank you, Roger. No other questions or comments? Well, thank you very much indeed, Lorraine. Very interesting, very useful. And we move on to the next item. Unless, Ewan, did you want to add anything at all?
No, thank you, Councillor Holmesby. And just to say thank you to members for their support in helping us promote both the High Street Fund and the Place Plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, councillors, we move on to the item 6 on the agenda, which is the River Stour water quality planning considerations. And is that Llewellyn?
Good evening, Councillor Hollinsby. Yes, thank you very much. I'm just going to get everything working and I'll be with you. Let's do that. Can you all see that? Is that clear enough?
Yep.
Yes.
And can I just quickly check you can all hear me because my microphone's been playing up today?
Yes, we can hear you, Llewellyn. Or at least I can.
Thank you very much, and sorry about that. Really, this is a brief update on, and I'm open for questions at the end happily because it's quite a complicated area, on where we are with the sort of the Stod Marsh nutrient neutrality issue that is affecting not just our district or part of our district, but actually all of the East Kent districts at the moment. And a similar issue is affecting actually other planning areas outside of Kent. Hampshire is one, and there's a few up in the north, and it's a growing issue, and it really revolves around environmental impact regulations. In the background to all this, we have put notice on our website. There's a link at the end of the presentation to sort of, if anybody wants to do some more reading. We have been working quite a lot in the background with partners across the East Kent authorities from a planning point of view, with Southern Water, the Environment Agency and Natural England, to try and understand the issue at hand, how much it affects the wider East Stour catchment, but also our own catchment directly, and what we can do from a planning perspective to make sure that we can push on and deliver on our ambitions. So where is Stod Marsh and what is it? Most of you might know, but for those that don't, Stod Marsh is a wetland nature reserve just located to the northeast of Canterbury. It's connected to the Stour through many different tributaries, the Great Stour, and also some of the tidal flows that run into it. And it's a very important area of water for wildlife in the United Kingdom, and is protected by environmental legislation as well as United Kingdom. So it's internationally important, and as such, it's given far more protection than other areas of nature conservation. The problem we have, Natural England have done some research, and they have found that a number of areas within the Stod Marsh catchment, which is shown in the Stod Marsh area, which is that largely green oblong that you can see on the right hand side of the presentation, nutrients are flowing into it from the various Stour sources, and there's an accumulation of nitrogen and phosphorus building in the water body. This is causing the eutrophication of parts of that site, which is making it very difficult for the living insects, invertebrates and fish to survive, and thus affecting the overall food source and food cycle of the area. Most of the nutrient inputs, the phosphorus and the nitrogen, are coming from wastewater from existing houses, agricultural resources through fertilizers and the use of agricultural land running off the water into watercourses and through the sort of sub-aquifers into Stod Marsh. Some industrial processes, but not a lot. And there's potential for some of the recycling of nutrients within the lake itself that can't be ruled out as contributing to it. There's a secondary issue that the lake hasn't been dredged or managed in an active way recently, and of course there is a build-up of nutrients within the body. The issue at hand is that as two parts of the Stod Marsh SPA have been found to not be in favourable condition anymore, we are required under environmental law to ensure that any projects we grant cannot cause the further deterioration of that status. We're not required to fix the problem. That's a different topic that we'll have to tackle in the future, but development can't be seen to make those problems worse. As a result, all development needs to effectively be nutrient neutral, i.e. not adding to the loading within the Stod Marsh SPA. In terms of how this affects Folkestone as a district and our development areas, the diagram on the right of the page is sort of the northeastern range of Folkestone. I'm sure you're all very familiar with it. And the 3 blue areas are the 3 Stour catchment areas. If you want a bit more detail, they're available on our public planning website as a layer under water and environment. Within those blue areas are 12 parished areas: Stelling Minnis, Elmstead, Elam, Limage, Stouting, Monkshorton, Sellinge, Lymm, Stanford, Postling, Ackrise, and Swingfield. That's the area we're going to. Any property that goes in there where the wastewater would be drained to an existing wastewater treatment works within those areas, namely Sellinge in our case, is covered by this, as is any development that would flow through natural watercourses after being treated into drainage ditches and then overland through surface water. The type of development this will affect going forward in planning terms is all developments where there's a net increase of population. And in practice, that means any overnight accommodation, largely new homes, but could include student accommodation, tourist accommodation, and most unlikely to involve a commercial accommodation unless that involves overnighting. So it could be, for instance, I'm trying to think of one, a warehouse potentially that has overnight for people to stop, or potentially truck stops, for instance, they have overnighting, which of course then generates the need for toilets and everything that goes with that. At its heart, this will affect any new residential development in those catchment areas, and there is no set scale. It will affect one dwelling as much as it affects 10,000 dwellings. There are a number of potential solutions to the problem, largely by treating or removing nutrients from the water system. We could provide new wastewater treatment works. We could look at land offsetting by taking agricultural land out of active agricultural use, and by repurposing it through wetlands, woodlands, watercourses, etc., because that would obviously take active phosphates and nitrogen out of the system. We can look at a series of water polishing, which is the effectively of cleaning water after it's been cleaned. We'll be looking at whether we need to be upgrading existing wastewater treatment works across the East Kent district, not just Sellinge, but is it Sturry and the wastewater treatment works in Ashford, Maidstone, and further afield. And longer term, there'd obviously also have to be management of the Stodmarsh SPA. That would be part of the solution, but not the ultimate solution, because really what we need to do is make sure we're cleaning the water sufficiently before it gets to Stodmarsh so that any management can work in perpetuity. In terms of planning applications, we can only approve plans or projects where there is no likelihood of a significant effect. The bar of a significant effect is both set by the habitats regulations, and it is the duty of the local planning authority as the competent authority to come to that decision in consultation with Natural England and any experts we choose to assist us with. The bar is very low, and the precautionary principle is being used, i.e. if you can't rule it out completely, you have to assume there will be harm, and therefore you cannot grant the planning permission. We will be requiring, and have been so, any new development that comes forward of any scale to carry out a habitats regulation assessment to establish the nature and potential impact of the impact on Stodmarsh. That will need to include an appropriate assessment, or AA as it's written there, which we will assess as the local planning authority, and if it's appropriate, in consultation with others, adopt. And that is the legal test for making sure we have suitably considered the impact on Stodmarsh. The nub of the issue is we need to make sure that sites are as clean as possible. And we can't rely on it's only one house, so is it really going to have a huge impact? If you'd like to know more about this, we've had a statement on our website at that address, and we'll be circulating these slides for everybody gathered here today. And I'm more than happy to take some questions today and answer any other further questions after this session. It's a hugely complicated area that I've really struggled with as my team over the last couple of months, but I think we are getting there, and sort of understanding what that means for us. Going forward, the examination in public for Otterpool will require a wastewater treatment works on site, and that was part of the proposals from the outset, and that will address the nutrients issue for Otterpool. But for other smaller sites where on-site water works are not appropriate, we will have to look at other methods such as taking land out of active use or otherwise. So that's a whistle-stop tour of the issue that we have, and I'm more than happy to take further questions.
Thank you, Llewellyn. Again, very interesting, and quite a emotive subject really for development. Do we have any questions? Paul.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jenny. Yeah, thank you for that, Llewellyn. It was very informative, actually. So Studmarsh SPA is the one of concern. My question is, are there any other areas that are maybe just below the threshold that could be impacted in the same way, but are just sat below that threshold at the moment? And if so, have you any ideas where they are and what likely impact that it could have on planning for the future?
It's a very good question. The test through the habitats regulation and the environmental impact regulations only applies to European designated sites. And in this instance, that is the Studmarsh SPA. So this issue doesn't affect other SPA sites that are European protected because there are different matters, but no, I don't believe there are others. This is a European designated sites issue. Okay. There was a similar case in Hampshire over a couple of years ago, which is really, we've learned quite a bit of them and how they're approaching it and what they've had to do there.
Okay. So just on that, so there's no plans for, as you quite rightly say, you know, I'm just mindful of Romney Marsh and the fact that we have, you know, a significant number of triple SIs and areas of you know, significant interest as well, but they're not likely to come into this category at all. Then
they don't come into this now because this is a water issue. It's right. It's not so much effluent. The water coming out of Sellinge is clean. Sellinge is actually the learning.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's an exceptionally high quality place. The issue is that the bar for the Studmarsh and the European laws, I understand it, so I'm learning all these things, is there is no 0.001, that's fine, but 0.02 isn't. If you can't rule it out, that's it. Yeah. That's the issue we're dealing with. There is a big investigation going on across the East Kent authorities as part of the ongoing wastewater review, looking at all of the different wastewater treatment facilities between us and the Studmarsh along the Stour catchments to see how they're performing and whether their licenses need upgrading as a matter of course anyway, but also specifically to address this issue.
Okay. No, thank you very much for that.
There may be other things that affect other SPAs in the future, but I can't tell you what they are now because we don't know at the moment.
Okay. No, thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Llewellyn. I think, Terry, you have a question?
A question, yes. A statement as well as a question. Of course, it was a very interesting presentation and some of which is new to me. But you have a government department, if you like, almost contradicting the instructions from central government that says, build more houses, please. And we have in Folkestone High the mandate to build, or they will be built for us, about 800 houses a year for God knows how many years, 10 or 12 years. Now, obviously you mentioned Otterpool, but there are lots of other places around the Martello Lakes and its sister Martello Park, the John Moore Barracks developments, the new Romney developments, a whole load of new houses going up. Now, this, if you like, is the horse is already bolted. It's a question really as to how far that horse has bolted, because you've almost thrown a big spanner in the works, saying this has got to be done before procedures begin, and yet we know that Otterpool, to a lesser extent, Princess Parade and places like that, they've already gone ahead. I just wonder where the kind of demarcation lies. That was all.
Don't think it covers the whole district, but Llewellyn, I'm sure you can respond to that, please.
Thank you, Councillor Hornsby. Thank you, Councillor Mullard. Yes, it only affects development within those blue catchment areas that I had on one of those slides, and it only affects the parishes that are affected there. So it doesn't go down as far as Folkestone Town Centre or down to the marsh at the moment, because they outflow to different wastewater treatment works that don't flow into the Stour and therefore don't flow towards Stodmarsh.
So Otterpool then.
So Otterpool, Sellinge, and any individual windfall sites that come forward in those areas will have to be assessed. Now, thankfully, we were alive enough to this issue, and well, actually the council was reasonably forward thinking in the Otterpool proposals by wanting to go with a high quality wastewater treatment works in the first place anyway. And so we've been fortuitous that won't affect our housing plans for Otterpool, because it's planned into the development and it's already mitigated for. That's part of the development plan, and it will be part of the planning application as it comes forward. There are other sites that will undoubtedly be affected, but there are mitigations that can be put in place. But the other sites across the district which are outside the catchment are unaffected, and the development plan can proceed accordingly.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Roger.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, I think that the parishes that are very closely affected by this, as you've mentioned, are the Postling, Lyminge, Elam, in other words, the Elam Valley. And we're getting a lot of reaction from people that there is a lot of wastewater lying around at the moment, and there seems to be sort of emergency measures, a lot of pumping going on and so on. Presumably that's connected with it. Is it, some bit of firefighting going on?
Well, I couldn't comment on whether that's connected with this. No, I mean, as far as I understand, that's just probably ongoing southern water. It's not connected to this issue, because this issue covers new development, not past development, and making sure that we're not adding extra load to the system through new developments.
But you wonder to us, sorry, yeah.
And if we are, how are we mitigating it? Now, there is lots of concern, especially in the Elam Valley, around flooding, etc. And there's quite a, I don't know, I've been in contact with Councillor Peel about this recently. There are flood zones in Elam, but they run very much at the base of the valley in quite a narrow part of the sort of the parishes. But those issues are not related to this either.
It makes you, can I just add, it makes you wonder what Councillor Mullard said. It could be an inevitable consequence of the need to build and not having necessarily thought through the infrastructure, and we're now putting it right, if you like, plus the fact that we have unusually high water table at the moment, don't we? There's a lot of flooding going on, so they could be linked. There is certainly raw sewage in the flooding along the Stour Valley at the moment. Whether they're linked or not is another question, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you, Roger. Well, very interesting. Can I just ask a question, Llewellyn? With the site that's has planning permission in Sellinge, what sort of mitigation measures? I suppose I should look at the planning application, shouldn't I, and see what mitigation measures are included in that application.
Is that the one that's? Is that the one that's being built up by Taylor Wimpey at this moment in time?
No, it's
Is
the
that
other.
the Road House one?
Yes, yes.
The Rhodes House site, it wasn't considered at the time of the application because this wasn't an issue at the time of the application. I understand that the applicant is dealing with it through their reserved matters application. I haven't yet briefed myself on what their proposals are, but they will have to go through the process.
Thank you very much. I think I've found this a very interesting week. Not only have I learned a lot about SIL and S106s that I wasn't absolutely sure about, and Llewellyn's been helping me out there, and now a bit more about the nutrients issue. So thank you very much indeed. Are there any other questions? No. Right, well, that's